Continuing on our journey through the AFI 100 Best Movies list is 1966's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf at number 67. It's always really exciting to me to find a movie that I actually haven't seen. It also fell at a great time. I had just finished a full series rewatch of Mad Men the day before I saw this movie was next up on the list. I know the title by reputation. It is based on a play. That's about all I know about this movie. And of course, I also recognize the names Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. I shut myself in my theater, left my phone upstairs, and went for the full-on theatrical experience to do this classic justice. We open on George, played by Richard Burton, and his wife Martha, played by Elizabeth Taylor, returning home after a party. The couple is agitated when we meet them, already at each other's throats. Martha's loud and harsh toward her husband, who responds with weary sarcasm. The way they're fighting lets us know that this isn't new in their relationship, but more likely their day-to-day norm. In the middle of all this, Martha brings up the fact that she invited a younger couple over to their place for drinks. This does not help George's mood. Nick, played by George Segal, and his timid wife, Honey, played by Sandy Dennis, arrive. The newcomer's arrival doesn't stop George and Martha from arguing. Martha furthers the strain on her relationship and not so subtly flirts with Nick. Honey is the only one who doesn't pick up on it. Nick is split on being uncomfortable with the flirtation as well as intrigued because, well, it's Elizabeth Taylor. George is agitated at the whole thing, but eventually jumps in, sarcastically of course. All the while, he and his wife are still trashing each other. Trying to take the course of this incredibly uncomfortable party into his own hands, George starts to interrogate the young couple. Honey, who's naive to start and is now an open book with so many drinks in her, has no idea that the prying questions are malicious. Through George's barrage, we learn that Honey got pregnant by accident, which is why the two of them got married. Nick is uncomfortable with the situation, but George's intelligent quick wit is running circles around the young couple's private life. Tensions begin to boil over. Honey passes out. Martha seduces Nick, and the two retreat to the kitchen for a very implied hookup. For some reason, George doesn't act on this. He stays in the other room with the passed out Honey. Don't worry, nothing creepy happens with the passed out Honey. It's clear George is in pain, but he stays surprisingly calm while his wife is openly cheating on him. When Martha and Nick get back, the argument reaches its peak. The entire time this older couple had been attacking each other, there are a number of references dropped about their son. He's always brought up in a way for the couple to hurt each other, or more specifically, for Martha to hurt George. George announces to the group, and Honey has rejoined the party by now, that their son had died in a car accident. Martha breaks down at this being said aloud. And then things go from straight up uncomfortable to outright weird. George and Martha never had a son. The son was a fiction the couple created sometime in their stressful past as a way to cope with or make an excuse for, if you ask me, their unfulfilling lives. As much as the two are only together and hate each other over this fiction, it may be a good thing since the fiction is what keeps the two together. Whether or not they would be better off apart is up to them and beyond the scope of this movie. The movie calms down after this big reveal. Nick and Honey are shaken by their experience and leave. Their real pregnancy may look more like a blessing than ever as the young couple goes back to their life together and have something to bond over. George and Martha are exhausted from their long night and their battle. This exhaustion goes beyond what we've seen, but just their whole life ever since this bickering started. The titular question of who's afraid of Virginia Woolf is dropped. It's a metaphor about facing reality. George admits that he is. But the intense movie closes off with a hint of promise that the two may be able to start mending their relationship now that they've admitted the truth to each other and others in the world. I said at the top that I was only vaguely familiar with this classic. Going into it, I thought it was a comedy. I was very wrong. I can see why it's a classic. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton are top-notch actors, and they're doing a great job in their roles. Movies this raw and real were not as common in the 1960s as they are now. The era this movie came out in is actually the beginning of the more gritty real cinema of the 70s that would influence Hollywood for decades to come. If you're a fan of film, I'd highly recommend this as a bit of film education. As something to casually pop on after a long day at your 9 to 5, it's something of a tough watch as you're literally watching a couple tear each other apart for the majority of the runtime. Check out this playlist next for more of AFI's 100 Best Movies.